The guard crossed the line, and her black eyes answered back. The child was sitting on the floor. That was the first thing Dara noticed. Not the noise of the transit corridor, not the long line of travelers waiting at clearance desks, not the flicker of the overhead light that had been broken for 9 days. The child, small, amber-furred, her arms pulled tight against a narrow chest, was sitting on the cold floor of Vorta Station with a bag half her size and a piece of paper held in 2 of her 4 hands. The paper was shaking. Dara slowed her walk. She was carrying a cargo manifest in one hand and a cold cup of something that passed for coffee on this station in the other. She had 17 things on her list for the next 2 hours. She slowed anyway. The child's name, Dara would learn later, was Loru. She was Feln, a species that looked something like a small primate wrapped in soft fur the color of autumn leaves. Feln had 4 arms, wide amber eyes, and a way of going very still when they were frightened, like something that had learned a long time ago that being small and quiet was the safest way to survive. Laura was doing that now. Going very still. The guard in front of her was not small. Hessek stood nearly 2 meters tall, scaled and thick-necked, wearing the gray uniform of the Varek Compact Enforcement Division. He had a baton on his hip and a bored expression on his face, which somehow made him look more dangerous, not less. Bored people in positions of power were always the most unpredictable. He was holding Loru's transit papers. "These are not valid," he said. He did not look at the papers when he said it. Loru's voice was barely audible. "They were processed at Relay 4. The authorization code is on the 2nd page. I can show you. I said they are not valid." Dara stopped walking. Around her, the corridor moved. Travelers shuffled forward, eyes down. A pair of dock workers in gray suits cut around her without looking up. A vendor cart hummed past. Everyone had somewhere to be. Everyone had already decided that whatever was happening over there was not their problem. Dara set her coffee cup on top of her cargo manifest. She looked at Loru. The child's papers were valid. Dara could see the Relay 4 authorization stamp from where she stood. She had processed enough transit documents in 3 years on Vorta Station to recognize a real stamp from a forged one. That stamp was real. She looked at Hessek. He had not read the 2nd page. He was not going to. This was not about the papers. Hessek reached down and grabbed Laura by one arm, the upper right one just above the small joint, and pulled. Not gently. The child made a sound, high and short, like something punctured. "Detention holding until someone comes to claim you," Hessek said. "Already turning, already dragging. Unaccompanied minor. No verified escort. Invalid documentation. She has verified documentation." The corridor did not go quiet. It was too loud for that. But the small pocket of space around Hessek, Loru, and Dara went quiet. The 3 dock workers nearby slowed without stopping. The vendor cart drifted a little wider. Hessek turned. Dara was standing 6 feet away. She was not tall by human standards. She was not visibly armed. She was holding a cargo manifest in one hand. She was wearing a logistics officer badge clipped to the front of a gray work jacket. She looked, by every external measure, like someone who had no business being in this conversation. She met Hessek's eyes and did not blink. "Relay 4 authorization," she said. 2nd page. The stamp is dated 3 cycles ago and countersigned by Compact Transit Clerk. If you have read the 2nd page and still find it invalid, I would like to know which regulation you are applying. Hessek's eyes moved over her slowly, the way powerful things looked at smaller things that had made a noise. Measuring, deciding. "Walk away," he said. "This is a compact enforcement matter. Then it should be easy to answer the question." He let go of Laura's arm. Dara noticed that. She noticed the way he let go. Not releasing, just freeing his hand for something else. His fingers moved toward his baton without touching it. A warning. The kind of warning that was meant to end conversations. Loru stood very still between them. Her wide amber eyes moved from Hessek to Dara and back again. She was not crying. She looked like she had already been through enough that crying had stopped being useful. Dara looked at her once, one quick, direct look that said stay still, and then looked back at Hessek. The corridor kept moving around them. Nobody stopped. Nobody would stop. That was the nature of a place like Vorta Station, where the Compact ran the desks, and the docking bays and the enforcement division, and where low-status travelers had learned a long time ago that nobody was coming. Dara had been on this station for 3 years. She had learned the same thing. She had also spent those 3 years writing things down. She reached in her jacket pocket with her free hand and pulled out a small recording device. She sat on top of the cargo manifest, facing Hessek. She did it slowly, clearly, without hiding the motion. "Go ahead," she said. Hessek stared at the device, then at her. His jaw moved once. Loru's papers were still in his hand. The baton came out, not fast. Hessek was not the kind of guard who moved fast. He was the kind who moved with the confidence of someone who had never had a reason to hurry. He lifted the baton slowly, held it at his side, and looked at Dara the way someone looks at a chair they are about to move out of the way. "Last chance," he said. Dara did not move. The corridor around them had thinned. People had not stopped to watch. This was Vorta Station, and watching got you involved. And being involved was expensive, but the natural drift of foot traffic had created a loose ring of distance around the three of them. The vendor cart was gone. The dock workers had found reasons to face the other direction. Loru stood between Dara and the wall, still holding her own papers now. Hessek had dropped them when he reached for the baton. The child had picked them up from the floor without being told. Both sets of her hands were wrapped around the papers. She was not running. She was watching Dara. Hessek took one step forward. Dara spoke first. Her voice was not loud. It did not need to be. "My name is Dara Osei. I am a logistics officer on contract with the Vorta Station Freight Division. I have been on this station for 3 years. In that time, I have filed documentation on 16 separate incidents involving compact enforcement conduct toward non-compact travelers." She paused. "This is now 17. Hessek stopped, not because the words frightened him, because something in the way she said them made him want to know what came next. "That recording device," Dara continued, "transmitted to a remote file when I placed it down. Whatever happens in the next 30 seconds is already off this station." It was a gamble. She said it like it was not. Hessek's eyes moved to the device, then back to her. He was running the calculation she wanted him to run. Not whether she was telling the truth, but whether he could afford to find out she was. He swung. It was a fast swing for someone who had been moving slowly. Dara had been waiting for that. People like Hessek moved slow until they decided, and once they decided, they moved fast, and knowing that meant you could track the decision before the motion. She stepped inside the arc. Her left hand caught his wrist above the baton. Her right elbow came up against the joint of his forearm. She turned her weight, used his momentum, and put him into the wall. It took 4 seconds. Hessek hit the wall shoulder first. The baton dropped. Dara's knee was behind his, her forearm across his back, his wrist locked in a position that would hurt badly if he moved, but would not break unless he made her. She did not say anything. She held him there and waited. Laura made no sound. Boots on the corridor floor. Fast official. Dara heard them before she saw the gray uniform appear at the edge of her vision. Release the officer. Now. Senior officer. The rank stripe on the collar was red. This was Tef. She had seen him in the administrative wing, had noted his name months ago, had filed him under knows the rules, and bends them carefully. He was not Hessek. He was smarter than Hessek, which in this context made him more dangerous. Dara released Hessek and stepped back. She picked up the recording device from where it had fallen and held it in her closed hand. She picked up the cargo manifest. She did not reach for the baton. Hessek pushed off the wall and turned. There was a long scrape on the shoulder of his uniform. His face had moved past board into something tighter. Tef looked at the baton on the floor, then at Dara, then at Loru. "Explanation," he said. Dara handed him Loru's transit papers before he finished the word. "Relay for authorization, countersigned, dated 3 cycles ago. Valid under Compact, Transit Code Section 9, Paragraph 4. The child is traveling alone under approved, unaccompanied minor protocol." Officer Hessek declined to read the second page and initiated physical contact with the minor. She let that land. "I have a record of the interaction from the moment I approached." Tef looked at the papers. He did read the second page. His face did not change, but something behind his eyes did. A small, careful shift, the look of a man who had just understood the shape of the problem in front of him. Hessek said, She interfered with, "Be quiet," Tef said. He said it without looking at Hessick. The corridor had found a reason to be slightly less empty again. Not a crowd, just people who had slowed down. Workers from the lower decks, mostly non-compact species. A few felon faces among them, wide amber eyes watching from a distance. Tef handed the papers back to Loru. Loru took them carefully with 2 hands. Then she looked up at Dara. She reached out and wrapped 4 small fingers around 2 of Dara's fingers, the way a child holds on when they're not sure anything else is stable. Dara looked down at the small amber hand. Tef was watching her when she looked back up. "Your name," he said. It was not quite a question. Dara Osei. Logistics, Freight Division. She met his eyes. "I will be available for any formal review you want to schedule." Tef looked at her for a long moment. Around them, the corridor breathed. The ring of watchers had not moved. "Report to administrative level at the start of next shift," he said. "I will," Dara said. She did not sound worried. Tef's office had no windows. That was the first thing Dara thought when she sat down across from him. Vorta Station had observation panels on nearly every level. The designers had understood that beings living in deep space needed to see the stars, or they went a particular kind of quietly mad. But Tef had no panel, just gray walls, a desk, a rank insignia mounted too high and too centered to be accidental, and a look on his face that said he had rehearsed this meeting before she arrived. He let her sit in silence for a moment. She let him have that. "You struck a compact enforcement officer," he began. "I deflected a baton swing and applied a control hold," Doris said. "Officer Hessick initiated physical contact. With a child first, then with me. That is your version. That is what the recording shows." Tef's jaw moved once. He folded his hands on the desk. "You are aware that civilian interference with compact enforcement activities is a violation of Station Conduct Code. I am aware that code also requires enforcement officers to follow compact transit regulations when processing non-compact travelers. Section 9, Paragraph 4. She paused. And Section 14, which covers use of force guidelines. Hessick skipped most of those. Tef looked at her the way a careful man looks at something he has not fully measured yet. "You know the codes well," he said. "I read when I cannot sleep." He was quiet for a moment. Outside the office, the station moved, distant hum of freight loaders, the thin sound of the public address system calling a departure. "I'm going to need the recording," Tef said. "I've already filed it." She placed a small data chip on his desk. "That is a copy. The original has been transmitted to my personal archive off station. There is also a second file." She placed another chip beside the first. "That contains documentation of 16 prior incidents involving Officer Hessick and non-compact travelers on this station. The files go back 22 months. Tef did not touch the chips. The silence in the room changed. It had been a controlled silence before. His silence, shaped by someone running a procedure. Now it was a different kind. The kind that comes when a man realizes the conversation he planned is not the conversation he is in. 22 months, he said. I wrote them down when I saw them. Dates, times, names when I could get them, descriptions when I could not. 7 of the incidents involved physical contact. Hessick was named in a complaint by a felon freight worker 14 months ago that was closed without review. She kept her voice even. I kept going because I did not know when it would matter. I thought eventually it would. Tef looked at the 2 chips on his desk for a long time. Then he sat back. He did not say anything for a while. Dara waited. She was good at waiting. If these files go to external oversight, he said carefully, the station review process becomes significantly more complicated. I understand that. It would affect the compact's relationship with this station's operating license. I understand that too. He looked at her. What do you want? The question surprised her a little. Not because it was wrong, but because it was honest. She had expected more maneuvering. She gave him the honest answer back. The child gets safe transit and a proper escort assignment. Hessick goes off the floor, and the documentation goes to wherever it needs to go so that the next Loru does not sit on the floor alone. She met his eyes. I do not want to fight. I just want those 3 things. Tef was quiet again. Later that afternoon, Dara found one in the break room on level 4. One was spider-like, 6 limbs, the color of old charcoal, and had worked the Vortidock for longer than Dara had been alive. He was eating something that smelled like engine coolant and reading a transit log. He looked up when she came in. He had heard. Of course he had heard. Word on Vortis Station traveled faster than freight and less reliably, but the shape of it was usually right. You recorded HFY for 2 years, one said. Not an accusation. Something else. 22 months. And you waited. I was not waiting, Doris said. She sat down and poured herself a cup of something warm. I was keeping records. There's a difference. One put down his transit log and looked at her with the particular stillness of a species that had many eyes and used all of them. We do not have a word for that, he said finally. What you did. In my language, the words for patience and the words for planning are different words. What you did was both and neither. Dara drank her coffee. In mine, we just call it being careful. One was quiet for a moment. Word is going around the lower decks, he said. People saw. The non-compact workers. The film. Some others. He paused. They are looking at the corridor where it happened differently. Like something changed about it. Dara did not answer that. They are also looking at you differently, he said. She stood up and picked up her cup. She had a cargo manifest waiting. I'm going to check on Loru, she said. Loru did not sleep well. Dara found that out on the second night, when she came by the transit holding block to drop off a meal packet and found the child awake and sitting near the small observation slit in the wall, watching the dark between the station's outer lights. Dara pulled a chair over, and Saturday, she did not ask what was wrong. She had worked in a trauma ward once, a long time ago, before logistics, before space, in a place on Earth where people came and broken, and you learned quickly that asking what's wrong was often the least useful thing you could do. You sat. You waited. You let the other person decide when words were useful. Loru spoke first. The lights out there do not blink, the child said. Stars blink when you look at them through air. But out here they just stay still. Atmosphere scatters the light, Doris said. Makes them look like they're moving. Our homeworld had thick air, Laura said. Everything blinked. She said it simply. Past tense. Had Doris said nothing. The compact came with contracts, Laura said after a while. My mother said it seemed fair at first. Use our orbital lanes, pay a usage fee, keep the peace. Then the fee became a debt. Then the debt became policy. Then the policy became everything. She touched the wall near the observation slit with one small hand. They do not destroy worlds. They just make them expensive to live on until the young leave first and the old cannot afford to follow. Dara looked at the child for a long moment. Laura was maybe 9 years old by Feln's standard, which put her at roughly equivalent to a 6-year-old by human measure, small enough that most species would not think to ask her opinion on anything, old enough to have understood exactly what had happened to her home. You should not have to know all that, Doris said. Not yet. I knew it before I was old enough to say the words for it, Laura said. She turned and looked at Dara with her wide amber eyes. Does that happen with humans? Yes, Doris said. It does. They sat together for a while. The station made its sounds, low and mechanical and constant, the breath of a machine that never stopped. Outside, the stars held still. Dara started teaching Laura small things the next morning. Not because she had a plan, because the child was sharp and curious and had nothing to do, and idle sharp minds in difficult situations went to dark places. She showed Laura how to read the transit signage along the corridors, the color codes, the symbols, what the red edge signs meant versus the blue. She showed her the difference between a safe checkpoint and a processing station, how to identify the former, how to avoid the latter when traveling alone. If you ever get stopped, Dara said, and you're not sure whether the person stopping you has the right to, ask to see their jurisdiction code. It is a number. Every compact officer has one. If they do not show it, you walk to the nearest occupied public area and you stay there. What if they follow? Then you're in a public area and they're following a minor. That is now their problem, not yours. Laura repeated it back, word for word. The child had a precise memory. Dara had noticed that on the third day, HFY passed them in a corridor. He had been moved to a different floor, administrative filing, away from the transit desks. He was not in a good mood about it. He was walking with 2 other guards and talking, but he stopped when he saw Dara. Dara stopped too. She turned and faced him. She said nothing. Her expression did not change. Hessek looked at her for a long count. Then he looked at Loru, who was standing slightly behind Dara's left arm, watching with amber eyes, and he said something to the guard beside him in a low voice. Then he walked away. Laura looked up at Dara. "He is angry," Loru said. "He is," Dara agreed. "He is going to stay angry." "He is," Dara said again. "That is his choice to make. What we do next is ours." Later, Risa stopped Dara near the communications hub. Risa was 26, human, had come to Vorta Station on a 2-year contract that she had already extended once because, as she had told Dara once, she was not ready to go back to a world where the sky had a ceiling. "You are a story on the lower decks," Risa said. "The workers down there are saying your name like it means something." "I am a logistics officer," Dara said. "Right," Risa said, in the tone of someone who did not believe that was the whole picture. Dara looked at her. "If it means something, it should mean this. Keep records. Be consistent. Do not look away the first time." She adjusted the strap of her bag. "That is all I did. It is not a legend. It is a habit." Risa was quiet for a moment. "Can I learn that habit?" she asked. Dara thought about it. "Come find me after your shift," she said. The shuttle arrived without announcement. That was the first sign. Private vessels on Vorta Station filed transit notices 12 hours before docking. It was regulation, it was logged, and it was the kind of thing that only got skipped when someone had enough rank to make the skip disappear. The shuttle was clean, dark-hulled, and marked with a compact administrative seal that Dara had only ever seen in official documentation. She saw it come in through the bay window while she was walking the freight level. She went back to her quarters and changed her jacket. Then she went to find one. Director Palin arrived on the concourse level an hour later. He was tall, pale-scaled, and moved like someone who had spent a long time in rooms where everyone stood when he entered. He had 2 assistants who walked half a step behind and slightly to the left, and he had the particular expression of a man who had come to solve a problem he considered minor. He requested a meeting with Dara through official channels. She agreed. They sat in a small conference room near the administrative hub. His 2 assistants stood by the door. Dara sat alone, her hands on the table, her recording device in her jacket pocket. She had already turned it on. Palin was pleasant. That was worth noting. The high ones were always pleasant first. He said her record on Vorta Station was excellent. He said her initiative was admirable. He said that the compact valued the contributions of human contractors and had always maintained a productive relationship with human space. Then he offered her senior logistics posting on a compact core world. Better pay, better quarters, real atmosphere and gravity. Dara listened to all of it. Then she asked her question, what happens to the Felon refugee group under current compact transit policy? Palin paused for just a moment. A small pause, but she caught it. Refugee classification is handled through the standard processing system, he said smoothly. Each case is reviewed on its merits. Under current policy, Dara said again, unaccompanied minors from dead-absorbed worlds can be held in compact transit detention for up to 60 cycles pending family verification. Most of the Felon refugee group are families with children. What is their current classification? Palin looked at her. The pleasant expression had not moved from his face, but his eyes had changed behind it. That is a complex administrative matter. I will take that as an answer, Dara said. She declined his offer. The pleasant expression held for another few seconds. Then it changed. Not dramatically. Palin was too practiced for dramatic. Just as settling, like a face finding its real arrangement after holding a different one for too long. Your contract on this station, he said, is renewable on a cycle basis. Compact endorsement affects contractor ratings across the entire trade network. I know, Dara said. Humans operating in this region of space without compact endorsement have very limited options. I know that too. Palin let the silence sit for a moment. You are making this more difficult than it needs to be, he said. His voice was still level. It had just stopped being warm. Dara met his eyes. 3 days ago, she said, I transmitted my full documentation of Officer Hessek's conduct history to the Galactic Rights Oversight Board, the Independent Transit Observers Network, and the Relay Press Collective. She did not blink. I also transmitted a note saying that I had been contacted by a senior compact official and that any changes to my contract or contractor rating in the next 60 cycles should be considered potentially retaliatory. Palin was still. This conversation, Doris said, has been recorded since you sat down. It will be transmitted in the next 10 minutes regardless of what happens in this room. The two assistants by the door had gone very quiet. Palin stood. He did it slowly, correctly, with no visible anger. The pleasant expression did not come back. He picked up his documents from the table. "Good day, Officer Osei," he said. He left without his assistants rushing to catch up. Doris sat at the table for a moment. The recording device was still running. Outside the conference room window, visible through a gap between two freight containers, one was leaning against the wall of the corridor with what appeared to be a dockworker's log. Risa was standing near a comm panel 10 meters away, her back to the room, her own recording device clipped to her collar and facing the conference room glass. Dara had asked them to be there. They had both shown up early. Bricks arrived carrying too many bags. That was how Laura described him later. The coordinator who came with too many bags and worried eyes. He was SETI, a small species with pale feather crests and a gentle way of moving, and he had clearly been traveling hard because his crest was flat in the way SETI crests went flat when they were exhausted. He found Dara at the freight level and introduced himself carefully, the way someone does when they're not sure how they will be received. "I am Bricks," he said. "Refugee Transit Coordinator, Independent Commission." He looked at her a beat too long before continuing. "I have been assigned to take custody of the minor designated Loru and begin proper refugee group processing." He paused again. "I was also told to inform you of something." "Go ahead," Doris said. "Loru has been flagged in the compact system as a flight risk. The notation was added 2 cycles ago." He said it carefully, like he was sorry to be the one carrying it. "Under that classification, refugee group processing is delayed and the minor would be subject to additional holding." Dara looked at the freight loader beside her. She set down the manifest in her hand. "Who added the notation?" she asked. Bricks checked his record. "The filing officer is listed as Administrative Desk 7. He looked up. "That is Director Palin's team." She had expected something. This was the shape it had taken. She called Reset.B. Why the next morning, Representative Otho was on the station. He was Sun, a tall species, pale gray, unhurried, with the kind of face that was very hard to read and the kind of record that was very easy to look up. He represented the Galactic Rights Oversight Board and had been in transit toward Vorta Station since before Palin's shuttle had even arrived, which meant her transmissions had reached the right people faster than the compact had anticipated. He met with Dara in the same conference room Palin had used. He did not bring assistance. He poured himself water and asked if she wanted some, and listened to everything she said without writing a single note, which she suspected meant he was recording it himself. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. "You filed all of this," he said, "for one child." "I filed it because of one child," Doris said. "The documentation existed before she arrived. She was just the moment it became necessary." "Why keep it at all? You're a logistics officer. These incidents were not your responsibility." Dara thought about how to say it simply. "The first time you look away," she said, "you can still tell yourself it was complicated. The second time is easier. By the 10th time, you do not notice you are doing it anymore." She looked at him. "I did not want to stop noticing." Otho looked at her for a moment. Then he nodded once and stood that he spent 4 hours in Tef's office. Dara did not know exactly what was said. She did not need to be late afternoon. 3 things had happened. Loru's flight risk notation had been removed and formally voided on record. The Felon Refugee Group had been granted protected transit status under Oversight Board Provisional Authority, meaning the compact could not interfere with their processing without triggering a full board review. And Hessek had been suspended pending investigation, with Tef listed as a cooperating witness, which told Dara something useful about what Tef had decided to be. She found Loru at the departure gate 2 hours before the transport left. Loru was dressed in clean clothes. Bricks had sourced them somewhere, and was carrying her bag more comfortably than she had when she arrived. She looked less like something waiting to be hurt. That was the most important difference. Dara crouched down, so she was at the child's level. "Bricks is a good coordinator," Dara said. "He worries too much," But that is not the worst quality in someone whose job is keeping track of you. Loru almost smiled. Will I see you again? The child asked. I will be somewhere, Doris said. And by the time you come back through somewhere, you will know how to find safe people without needing me to point them out. Loru reached up and pressed both of her upper hands against Dara's face. It was a fond gesture Dara had looked up to nights ago. It meant I will carry this. Dara covered one small hand with her own for a moment. Then she stood. Bricks guided Loru gently toward the boarding line. At the window of the transport, Loru turned and pressed a small amber hand to the glass. Dara raised 2 fingers. The transport sealed. Behind her, the concourse was still. Not empty. The lower deck workers, the dock crews, the non-compact travelers who had been watching the station for weeks. They were all there. Not crowded, not dramatic. Just there. One appeared at her shoulder. They are not here for a story, he said quietly. They are here because they needed to see how it ends. Dara turned back to the freight level. She picked up her manifest. The cargo was not going to clear itself. Tell them it does not end, she said. Tell them it just continues. She went back to work.